You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi guys, and it's lovely to be back with you. You're listening to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis, and we're back to our full schedule after our shorter episode last week. Someone commented on Facebook that my shorter show was in fact over an hour long. They're right, but to me it felt a little incomplete when I didn't give you a middle section of the show. Anyway, we're back on with the ATC segment again this week, so we're well over an hour. Our main guest today is a rather remarkable character. Steve Yale, or Walmart 2021, wrote to me, and his hook was that he did his first hike in all Walmart gear, hence the name. But since then, he can't stay off the trail. You'll hear from Steve in a moment. Today, in the ATC part of the show, we have their Director of Communication, Jordan Bowman, and Jordan's topic is The Message Matters, defining the AT's voice. Given what's happened this year, it seems to be a good time to talk with the communications guy. Jordan will be along after Steve. And we have a winner in our map giveaway, generously donated by Larry Knight and Don Robinson. If you listen to the show, you'll know how that came about. I did a Facebook Live yesterday on the Hiking Radio Network page, and I'll tell you who the winner is after we hear from Jordan and the ATC. And finally today we'll have the next couple of chapters of Larry Luxembourg's book, Walking the Appalachian Trail. I thought it was a fascinating chapter with different people's perspectives of how the trail should be walked, or more accurately, how they want to walk the trail. He also spins off into what was probably a bit of a new thing in the early 90s, speed hiking the AT. So why not get started and meet a man who is, it must be said, kind of obsessed with the Appalachian Trail in a good way. Here's Steve Yale, or Walmart 2021. So I'd like to introduce you all to a guy who has hiked the AT for each of the past 2 years and he's going to get in 2021. This is Steve Yale, better known as Walmart 2021. Hi, Steve. How are you?
Hey, how's it going, Mighty Blue?
Not too bad. Now, you don't seem to be the regular AT hiker. In fact, as I understand it, you came to the AT with very little experience and with some interesting gear. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I had zero hiking experience. I mean, I've done hour hikes, but overnight backpacking, I've never done none of that. And I started out with all Walmart gear. I geared out at Walmart for $130. Took about 30 minutes of shopping. And
why do you think? Why did you do that? And was it a case you were trying to save money, or you just didn't know really the sort of stuff you needed to get?
Yeah, I was really going on a budget. I didn't know how much I need. I was way under budget already. I was just winging it, and I was just sending it and trying to do it as cheap as I could. And
Funny enough, I give away a free book called "Hiking the Appalachian Trail is Easy," especially if you've never hiked before, because you don't, you can make mistakes, but you don't know, do you, until you've actually been out there and experienced it, what the right thing to do is, do you?
No, I thought the whole trail was probably mostly flat. I knew we'd be going over hills. I didn't think there'd be that many mountains.
You thought we'd be going over hills. Excellent. Yeah. Now, I suppose your name reflects the gear. Who called you Walmart then?
I did research online on a Facebook site, Appalachian Trail Facebook site, and a guy named Mike took me under his wing and said, "I'll get you to the trail. I'll get you registered, and I'm going to name you Walmart." I didn't really like it. I didn't really like it at first, but it really stuck to me after a while as people got to know me as Walmart.
You don't have to accept your trail name, don't you? It's
yeah.
Not, you know that now, but it's kind of too late, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I embraced it.
So, as I say, you're going for the third time in 21. So, and I went in 2019 as well. So let's get back to 2019. And in fact, you started, I believe, in April 2019. What made up your mind firstly to get onto the trail, and then why at that time? Why in April?
Well, I was dating a girl at the time who had to go to prison, unfortunately, for something she did before we met.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and
that doesn't help any relationship. Let me tell you.
no, it sounds sort of like a Jerry Springer story, but yeah, no, it's just a girl I was dating. I knew for a long time, got in some trouble, and I also had a son who's 20s, and he was 21 at the time, and he was also in trouble in jail, and I was just fed up with all the people I know being locked up, and I've never been in jail in my life, but it seemed like the judicial system was affecting a lot of my life.
Wow, that must have been tough for you because I understand you raised your son as a single father, didn't you?
Yeah, and I tried to get him going the right path, and after he hit his 20s, I was just more of an enabler than really helping him out. I mean, what he really needed was tough love, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, I've got a son who's 40 next year, and he's had problems most of his life as well, unfortunately.
Most families do have that story in their
right.
family.
Yeah, you're right. So you thought that as everybody was going to prison, you thought you'd go on the trail. Why was that? Why did you make that choice? Why the trail? Had that been something you've been thinking about at some stage?
Well, I've got wind of it on a Netflix documentary a long time ago, and I guess it was sort of a mental breakdown with all the loved ones going to where they were. I was like, man, I'm just going to go out in the woods and try to find peace and accept what's going on in my life.
And you are in a kind of unusual age bracket for an AT hiker. I know you're in your 40s, I believe. How were you able to leave work and get out there in the first place? Because most people, they're in the middle of their career by then, aren't they?
First off, I'm a very young 40s. I'm very young at heart, and I ride dirt bike, and I'm a pretty active person. I work construction in Texas. I've been doing that for 25 years. I have a great boss that totally supported me going out there. He wanted me to go for it. He wanted to see me do it, and I didn't think he'd think it as a 2-year thing, but yeah, he actually sent me money out there when I needed it, and he was totally on my side, just like my family and everyone else. Everybody's just been really rooting on me, especially the first year. It was so hard with the Walmart shoes I used the whole way through.
So how many pairs of Walmart shoes did you actually wear on the trail?
I sort of lost count, but it was 12 to 14. Up north, they had to get sent to me because the Walmarts are fewer and far between. But yeah, I stayed with the same brand of shoe, $22.95 hiking sneaker from Walmart, and people say I sound like a commercial for them, but they really worked for me. They gripped real well, and my feet were comfortable. Just they didn't last that long.
So what are you wearing? What are you wearing now then? Not right this second, but when you go on the trail.
Well, believe it or not, I found a cheaper way. I go with oboes, and they replace 2 pair for thru-hikers.
That's
true. As long as you're hiking the AT. So my shoe budget for the 2020 was $150.
Right. Wow. Yeah. I did exactly that with the oboes as well. Are they renewing that again next year?
I hope so. I mean, I just really got used to oboes, and they're a really strong shoe. I hope they do it, and if they don't, I'm probably still going to go with them anyways.
Yeah. So your girlfriend and your son were inside. Were you able to get any logistical help from a family member or a friend? And you mentioned your boss was supporting you. Was he supporting you on the trail as well?
He'd send me money every month that I had to pay back to him after the hike, sort of to ensure I worked with him. You know what I mean?
That's fair enough.
Yeah, but no, he was really great about it. My family was great about it, and people I met on the trail just helped me the whole way. Because, like I said, I didn't really plan it well. I really didn't have the money to do it, And people just helped and helped. I have trail angels all through the trail that just helped. There's countless trail angels.
Did you resupply from home, or did you just buy stuff as you went along then?
Nope, I was a Dollar General resupply. Dollar General, Walmart. Yeah, just hiker box, whatever I could find, and the cheapest I could do it. I was having a blast out there. I did whatever I could to stay out there and make it happen. And in the end is really the trail angels and my friends and family on Facebook contributing, and they just showered me, and it was amazing. And I just hope I can give back.
Yeah, that's so cool. That's so cool. So you started out not knowing a lot about hiking, but you told me when we spoke before that a ridge runner gave you some helpful advice. What was that advice?
Yeah, I had my Walmart pack from the start. I did the stairs at Amicola and camped at the first shelter. And on the way to Springer the next day, a ridge runner stopped me and he talked to me, and I was telling him I was doing 10 miles, and he told me, "You're not going to make it to Katahdin doing 10 miles a day." then he noticed my pack was all hanging off me all wrong. So he helped me adjust my Walmart pack to me and sent me down the trail.
And that, it's funny actually, just a small, and you did mention this, as I say before, it's a small little tip like that, just can almost not so much save your life, but it can certainly save your hike, couldn't it?
Oh, definitely. You got to make sure it's strapped to you nice. And yeah, it definitely makes all the difference. And I remember that Ridge Runner to this day. It was a pretty awesome experience.
That's cool. Now, I left, as I say, a couple of months before you in 2019. I just saw a single bear on my hike, and that was in Shenandoah, where basically there are about 30 bears to every person in the park, I think. But it didn't take you as long as it took me, did it, to see a bear? How long did it take you?
No, I seen my first bear probably about 3 hours into my hike out of Amacola. It was awesome.
Amazing.
It was amazing. He was climbing a tree, had his back to me, so I got to look at him for a while. And
Were you nervous? Because, the unknown, you still don't know what it's like out there, do you? You don't know whether the animals are dangerous or nasty or what they're going to be like, really. What do you think when you saw the bear?
I wanted to tell somebody, but there was nobody to tell. Yeah.
Oh, dear.
No, it was a magical experience. I wanted to see a bear, and there it was. It happened the first day of my trip. Within the first 3 hours, I was like, man, it's just an amazing start for an amazing journey.
That is awesome. So you're on the way in your Walmart gear, and you learn how to put your pack on. So you've already got people helping you straight away, which is great. But you've got some even more amazing trail magic. You got at Neil Gap very early on in that 2019 hike. What did they give you at Neil Gap?
Well, I went into Neil Gap and I bought last year's guidebook for a discounted price, and I told Zeus, the worker there, that I was probably the cheapest hiker he ever met, and he told me he doubted it. But I asked about a used pack, and he came out with a brand new Granite Gear Blaze 60 and gave it to me for free. He wouldn't accept money for it and just told me to take it. I needed it.
So what did you do with your Walmart pack? You didn't dump that straight away, did you?
No, I actually gave it to the Zeus, and he said he was going to donate it to the local Boy Scouts or something like that, because it's still in great shape. It only had 40 miles in it.
That's right, yeah. So, and I'm not sure if it was the kindness that you received at Neil Gap, but you've developed a kind of trail magic tradition for yourself at Neil Gap, haven't you? What do you do? Well,
I like to watch all the other hikers come over Blood Mountain and congratulate them and buy them sodas and candy bars or whatever I can. But yeah, I just like sitting out there and watching them come over. I actually take a zero at Neil Gap every year just so I can sit at the table and watch for people to come over.
So what is it you see then when they come down that path? Because, I'm thinking back to it myself now. You can see people coming down the mountain for quite a long time, can't you?
Oh, yeah. And you could just tell the accomplishment in their face of what they just went through and the beginning of their journey. It's just, it's great to root for people. And I want to see everybody go the whole way. Obviously, not everybody's going to make it the whole way, but I like to try to pump people up. And
what do you think when you see them? Do you feel that you can make a judgment at that stage or not? Because you've done this, you know what it takes to do it. So what do you think when you see these faces? Do you think this person's going to do it or that person's going to do it? And do you ever know whether you're right?
Yeah. Some people, you'll think they're going to make it and then they don't make it. And then some people you're like, I don't really know. And then they're the ones that make it. You'll see them thousands of miles down the trail with you. But that is the perfect place to get an adjustment. It's a great outfitter and they're just real kind there. And it's a perfect place to see what your body's feeling after the first 40 miles. It's just, it's a great resting spot.
And the reason I ask that is because, you're really not in the rhythm of the hike by then. You don't know what you're capable of by then. You think, I can see why people quit there. They've done 30 odd miles. They think, well, this just isn't for me. And, all those shoes thrown up in the trees. I don't think you can really know I think 200 or 300 miles before you really feel you're comfortable on that trail, especially if you haven't done it before. Do you feel that way as well?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, you don't get your trail legs in the first 40, 50 miles, that's for sure. But, it's just, that's a great place to rest. And I take my first zero there just to listen to my body, make sure my feet are doing good. Cool. And, it's just an awesome place. It's a magical place on trail, the first magical place on trail for me.
There's tons of them, yeah. And talking about traditions, who or what do you speak to first thing every morning?
Every morning, I like to tell the Appalachian Trail good morning. I say, good morning, Appalachian Trail. Then I like to talk to the trees and the rocks. And, I don't know if it works or not, but it seemed to be going good. I tell the trees, I thank them for the oxygen, and I tell the rocks not to trip me in the roots.
How's that work out for you?
Oh, great. I got a lot of superstitions like that. I mean, I name my shoes Theodore and Roosevelt. My backpack has a name, it's just
What's your backpack's name?
Monkey.
Of course it is. Silly.
Monkey.
Is it monkey on your back? Yeah, quite right. Too.
And then the second backpack, I named it M2. And then I had my third backpack.
M3?
M3. And I have all the brains for every backpack I ever owned in the same backpack. I use them as bags.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. I wouldn't have thought of that. How interesting.
Yeah. And another thing I like to do during the day when I wake up is tell my feet, I say, come on, feet, don't fail me now.
So do you fall over much? I mean, I the second time I went, I thought to myself, I'm not going to fall over as much. I'm going to be much more careful with my foot placement. But I fell over almost exactly the same amount of times when I went in 2019.
Yeah, I fall a lot. Luckily, they're not injury falls, but yeah, it's something that's going to happen. You're going to fall out there sooner or later. I think with the Walmart shoes, I fell a lot more. But I think it was because most of the time they were like tied together and flopping. And yeah, with the oboes, I think I did better the second year because also the mechanics of my hiking got better.
Yeah.
I was just more used to the foot placement and physics of it.
We're talking of foot placement. Apparently, you walk backwards as well sometimes. You must be crazy.
Well, you get bored on trail,
It's bad enough walking forwards. I mean, walking backwards. I presume you only do that on very, very flat places. What's that all about? Just to have a different view?
Just to break up the day, to have a different view. It's just, the trail, it gets kind of the same thing over and over. So anything you can do to break it up. Sometimes I'll close my eyes and walk and see how long I can stay on trail before I go off. And never in really rugged, rocky places, just all smooth stuff.
And you don't use poles either, do you? Which I personally think I just could not hike without poles.
No, I use poles. I use Walmart poles.
But you didn't. Is that right? You didn't use poles.
I started out without poles. I didn't see the sense of it, and then and then as soon as I got a pair, I was like, it was night and day. Yeah, I'm definitely a pole user. Walmart only.
So you changed to a Granite Gear backpack within 30 odd miles. I presume since you started now, you've mentioned your shoes changing. Have you changed out pretty much most of your gear now?
Oh, yeah. The second year, I really dialed my gear in. The first year, I went with the Granite Gear Blaze 60. It's a heavy pack. But the second year, I downsized to a Granite Gear 38 ultralight pack.
Wow.
And I carry a lot less stuff now.
Is that a 38 liter pack?
38 liter pack all the way
through. You can't get a lot in there.
No, not at all.
Right. But you get, and I think one of the things you do learn on the trail, I'm sure you'll agree, is that you learn how easy it is to survive on so much less, don't you?
Oh, definitely. I sacrifice a lot of my comforts for my hiking. I'd like to be more comfortable while I'm hiking than at camp. So I don't have no bedroll. I don't have no camp shoes. I have no cookware. I cold soak everything. And
right.
Yeah, I think I got it like at 19 to 20 pounds.
Cool. That's right. Well, I say it's cool. So you say you buy a bedroll. Do you mean by that something for your bag to be on?
No, something for my bag and my body to be on. I just go straight tent to the ground.
Oh God!
I'll pile clothes underneath me and stuff. What little stuff I have, my rain gear and stuff like that. But yeah,
you sleep okay?
Yeah. I'm usually so tired that I just fall right asleep. I have no problems with my hips, my back, nothing like that. I sleep better out in the woods than I sleep back in the city when I'm back in Texas.
Isn't that cool? And something I know my listeners have heard me talk about before, the online community of Facebook, to me, is pretty bad. It's nothing like the trail you see out there. But you really got into the Facebook AT community, didn't you? How have they helped you over the years? And have they kept you going in terms of, their encouragement?
Definitely. I mean, I post on my Facebook. I don't post on other sites. I post on my personal Facebook. But yeah, the online, I've met people online that are my friends for life now that I actually met in person on the trail. Like
Oh, right.
Sharon and Lynn, they invited me into their house the first year, cooked for me. I did laundry, got
Cool.
rested up, and then now every year I see them, and it's just yeah, just friends that I mean, real friendships, and not it's not nothing fake or internet about it. They're real people that I'm really great friends with now.
That is cool. That is really cool. So for your first journey, you got to Katahdin in October, but you'd missed 100 miles. What did you miss out, and why did you miss that out?
I got lost coming out of the presidentials from Madison Hut. I went so I missed the Wildcats. I went to Rattle
Oh,
River, and all my friends were there. I was like, man, I can either go back and do the Wildcats, or I can leave out of here with my friends. And I was a
oh,
parasol away to New Hampshire too, so it was a rough decision. But I went and missed the Wildcats, and then everybody that my group with Rerun and Hound, they pushed through the 100-mile wilderness, and I jumped from Stratton to Millinocket and
oh, right.
summited. So, but then I did go back through the 100-mile wilderness southbound. I just missed from Munson to Stratton. That was the
Okay.
70 miles I missed, but I got them all this year.
All right. So, but you didn't consider going back to fill in on that hike. You just thought you'd get them
Oh,
next year. But
financially, I couldn't.
well,
Mentally,
yeah.
I couldn't. I mean,
But you said you were done anyway. You said no more hiking at all. And why did you feel that way? Did you feel it just beat you up so much the whole hike, or
yeah, it really beat me up mentally, physically. It was the most demanding thing I've ever done in my life. I couldn't believe I actually did 2,100 miles, all with Walmart hiking sneakers and zero knowledge of what was going on. I was underfunded, under-equipped, but yeah, it's a lot of stuff I made improvements on the next year.
so that's the bit I'm kind of interested in. And I, to be fair, I understand why, because I went again, but I went 5 years later. But I don't think I could have. I don't think I would have been in the mental place to go a year later. It would have been 6 months later, obviously, because you finished in the
Yeah.
October. And so, what changed? Why did or did you just miss it so much once you got back to Texas?
Yeah, that's all I think about in the off season is the trail. I just fell in love with so many parts of it. The people and the footwork. I really like the mechanics of the footwork and the challenging myself to see how much I could do and the views. I mean, it's just a melting pot of reasons to go out and do it. I found no reason not to go do it every year if you can.
Yeah. Well, funny enough, one reason that, because people often ask me why I wanted to go twice, I thought to myself, and I told them that there are things I missed in 2014 that I'm sure I'm going to get the chance to see again in 2019, because you go through a section of the trail and it's cloudy and it's foggy. You can't see anything, can you? And then to see it in bright sunlight, it's just an amazing difference. And then there are other things I saw first time I didn't see second time, and I love that difference, don't you?
Oh yeah, like going over Max Patch and camping
It's,
on a beautiful night there is awesome. But
yeah.
like this year, I went through in a thunderstorm, and that was equally awesome. It was a different kind of hike. It's just everything could be different. There's so much stuff to see there. It's just an amazing thing. 2,000 miles of trail. There's going to be a lot of different things each time you do it. Weather, people, pain.
Yeah, definitely the pain. The pain's definitely going to be there in some part of your body or other, isn't it? Definitely. So having gone once, you went again in this COVID year. What had changed from the guy who set out the previous year? Were you more comfortable? Did you feel you knew what you were doing? And if you did feel you knew what you were doing, were you surprised again by the trail?
Oh, I was a lot more comfortable. I was pretty much back at home. That's the way it felt. My feet remembered it like right off the bat. The mechanics, my steps. Yeah, there's a lot of physics to hiking, and yeah, once you get it down pat and learn all the little tricks, like not staring a hill in the eyes, I call it. I never stare a hill in the eyes. I look down and take smaller steps and just
No,
different.
well, hang on, explain that. Explain that to me.
Well, I mean, if you're having trouble going up a hill, instead of stopping and taking breaks, you just take smaller steps. Don't look to the top of the hill, just stare down at your feet and just do what you got to do to get up it. But longer strides will wear you out quicker. So you try to take shorter steps, and
Yeah.
just there's a lot of physics to it. I mean, going downhill, I love running downhill. I mean, that's why I try to keep my weight light and stuff. But it's just, it's just awesome. The physics of it, the footwork. I could take a YouTube, if I had a YouTube channel, it would just be all footwork videos.
Wow.
Just all of my feet.
Very interesting. So you felt, had your mindset changed as well? Did you feel very, I mean, I don't know how confident you felt when you went in 2019, but did you feel much more confident in 2020, or did you just feel confident both times?
I really felt confident both times. I always say I'm going to make it. I don't say I'm planning on making it. It's going to happen. It's something going to happen. I'm going to be at Katahdin every year, and I just don't play it any other way in my brain, you know. I've been lucky. I don't have injuries. Everybody's hurting out there, but the big thing is injuries. As long as you can stay uninjured, you're gold. You go.
You're right. Absolutely right. Yeah. And you've already mentioned this incredibly tolerant and very generous boss. So you came back, you went back to work, and you said you're going again. So how did he react this time? Was he just as supportive in 2020 as he was in 2019?
Yeah, I'm a subcontractor. I can work for a lot of places, but him supporting me like that keeps me there, you know? I mean, I love my job. I miss it. It's one thing I have. A lot of people out there don't know what their next step is. I know as soon as I get home, within a couple of days, I can go right back to work and right back into my old life, and I always have a spot there. No, he's just awesome. He's just super awesome.
I think that's a good way of not getting depressed as well. And a lot of people get this post-trial depression. I think going back into something must help. I know several people who've just allowed themselves to recover for too long and got themselves down on themselves. You go back to work pretty much straight away, don't you?
Oh, the first year I took off one day and then went back to work. That was a big mistake, you know?
Yeah, really?
Yeah. After looking down and at your feet for 2,000 something miles, I lost a lot of upper body strength. So this time I got back, and after 2020, I took 3 days off and went back, and it was still pretty miserable at first. Yeah.
So how did COVID factor into your hike in 2020, and when did you start?
I started 12 days later than I started in 2019. So I knew I had some time to make up, and I did that with ease, with knowing what was coming up and where my resupplies were and everything like that. And the COVID, the towns were a little more, I wouldn't say unwelcoming, but they're a little more weary on outsiders. Like Hot Springs was a totally different place.
Yeah, people have said that. Yeah. But I can, to be fair, there was so little known, I think, earlier this year about what this disease actually was, that I think I can understand their wariness of the people who are being on the trail. But,
definitely.
Yeah. I mean, they're a trail town, and they must have known people were coming through. And I'm sure, with less people on the trail, I mentioned this to somebody the other day, that I suspect norovirus wasn't too much of an issue this year then, because you were pretty much by yourself a lot of the time, weren't you?
Right. Well, I've only gotten sick out of my 4,300 miles of walking on the AT. I've only gotten sick one time, and I think that was from drinking too much. My immune system is second to none, I like to say. I mean, I've always been out in the dirt, riding dirt bike, and it's just, I got a pretty good immune system, and I keep on telling myself that, so hopefully it hears it and stays up to it. But yeah.
Now, I first spotted you on Facebook this year from your summit picture, and I want to talk about your summit in a minute. But before we come to that, tell us what you personally get from backpacking in general, and specifically on the Appalachian Trail. What are the things that really make you want to keep going back there?
Well, I don't go out there to conquer the mountains. I go out there to conquer myself. That's a quote I heard somewhere. I forget who said it. And it's just to see how far I could push myself, and the people and the views. I mean, that's all a byproduct of it that I really love. It's just but more, it's just like a personal time to get out. And
do you feel the need to push yourself though all the time? Is this something that within you that the trail just obviously fulfills in you? It does me as well, by the way. But is it the physical pushing, or is it the mental pushing that you like?
It's A little bit of both, the mental. I could be inside my own head all day long. That's a big part of it, is the mental. And if a lot of people can't do the mental thing, then it's going to be really hard on them. But yeah, there's definitely a mental tax to it.
Right.
But I like the physical tax to it too.
But you never thought, for example, going to the Pacific Crest Trail this year, you thought you'd go to the Appalachian Trail again, and you're going to go again in 2021. Are you just going to stay on the Appalachian Trail, or do you think you may do other longer hikes as well?
I think I'd probably just stay on the Appalachian Trail until I can walk down or walk on it or run down hills. When I can't hike it the way I like hiking it, that's when it's time to get off, And I really like going fast down hills, and it's just, yeah. If I can't do that, then I don't know if I want to be on there.
You mentioned going down fast downhill a couple of times now, so let's talk about that. Do you remember that walk? If you're going northbound, the walk you have in the last, I think it's half a mile or so down into Port Clinton. Remember that?
Oh, yes, that's a treacherous downhill.
And how fast do you go down that one?
Oh no, stuff like that, I go really slow. Yeah, but I mean, yeah, that's a little too much a grade to go hauling down. But on something lighter than that, I mean, like in Georgia, North Carolina, and stuff, they got milder hills, like going down in the Unicoi Gap and stuff like that. Yes. You can really travel down, but some of them are a little too treacherous. That is a dangerous downhill. I know exactly what you're talking about. right down to the railroad.
That's right. I could tell as you reacted straight away. Now, as I say, I spotted your summit picture on Facebook, and well, I was kind of shocked. Tell us about that day, and then tell us about the picture.
Well, today is, out of the 4,300 miles, that October 8th of 2020 was my greatest hiking day ever. Out of the whole 4,300 miles, it all culminated into the last day.
Wow.
And it was nasty weather. We knew it was going to be nasty weather before we started up. And it definitely was. It started sleeting, snowing, ice everywhere. And it was just a treacherous climb. The winds were 60 to 80 miles per hour, -4-degree wind chill.
Wow.
It was but it was a great hike. It was epic going all the way up it. And
it's an epic mountain, though, isn't it, Steve? It's just such an epic mountain.
That's going back to what you said about different weather and different experiences on the trail. That was the second time I climbed it with two different experiences, and I really like the extremeness of it.
Yeah, you do seem to thrive in that sort of thing, don't you? But anyway, you headed up. You got above tree line. And then it gets really exposed up there, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it must have been getting worse by then as well.
Oh, wow. It was hunker down, and yeah, you're pretty much crawling up it in them winds with the ice on it and everything. You're just crawling pretty much.
Yeah. So and some people were coming down. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, 3 hikers were coming down off the summit, and they stopped, and they told us that there was a corpse up there. That was kind of surprising, and it kind of took us all off guard. And yeah, so there was a hiker up there that passed away of hypothermia, I'm guessing. But yeah, I'm glad somebody told us before we got up there. But they were going down because they didn't have cell phone reception up there, and they were going down to notify the authorities.
Right. Was he a thru hiker?
I don't believe so. I think it was a young man from Maryland, and yeah, I don't know the circumstances of it. And some of us made the decision to keep on going. We pushed up to the top, and we got our summit photos, and we were just real respectful. We didn't go over to the guy. You can obviously see him. He was 20 feet, 30 feet from the sign. And yeah, it was sad. It was definitely sad. It took a little bit out of the day, but looking back on it, I was like, man, well, he died in adventure, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
But I feel bad for his family and everything. But man, that's
sure. So you finished for the second time, and did you feel the same as you felt when you finished the first time? You were physically beat up, or did you just feel more that you were able to do it, and did you know straight away you wanted to go again next year?
Yeah, I almost feel like it's the fountain of youth for me. It keeps me young. I mean, if you let your body sit for too long, it's going to get old. Everybody around me is talking about getting old. I'm like, man, I got the fountain of youth right here, but nobody listens. It's on the AT.
Yeah. Have you encouraged any of your friends to go out with you at all?
Oh, I encourage All my friends go. I mean, I went to school in Pennsylvania high school, so I have friends that come and visit me. And
Nice.
yeah,
Oh.
that's one of my favorite things to have would be to have more people that I know come out and hike with me.
So when are you actually going to be starting in 2021?
I'm going to start on April 20th, one day before I started in 19 and 13 days before I started in 20. So I'll have plenty of time that I can really enjoy some stuff that if I want to.
Nice.
And I'm going to summit on October 8th. That's my summit date every year.
It's always going to be summit date. Yeah, October. Yeah, how cool that is. So how different is the guy who's going to be standing at the top of Springer next year than the clueless bloke who started at the same place in April 2019? How are you a different person, or do you feel you haven't changed?
Oh, I changed a lot. I'm way more patient. It's just really been changing for me. I'm confident, way more confident now. My social skills have went way up. You know, it's weird being out in the woods would make my social skills go up, but yeah, it's it's just I feel stronger. I mean, every year I do it, I feel stronger and stronger. It's just an awesome experience.
Yeah, well, you sound like you're perfectly set up to do it again, and I hope that if you do it again, and when you do it again, sorry, because I know you don't say if, you say
right. Yeah,
when.
no, it's definitely happening.
When you finish it, I wish you will anyway. But when you finish it, come back and tell us about it then.
I definitely will.
Okay, buddy. Well, look, thanks for joining us, and 2 out of 2. So go for 3 out of 3. Happy days.
Oh, definitely. Till the wheels fall off.
They're not going to fall off. Take it easy, all right?
All
Cheers,
right, Mighty Blue. Bye.
Bye. There was so much more to Steve than met the eye, originally, for me. I'd seen his Facebook post on the top of Katahdin and wanted to know what that was like, but he turned out to be much more than just that somber moment. I'll definitely be watching out for him next year. What a boss! Who wouldn't want a boss like that? We all need support, and as you heard, Steve was supported by his boss and his Facebook family. How nice. Before we hear from Jordan, I want to thank several of you again for stepping up this week. 2 of our monthly donors, Suzanne Johnson and Michelle Brown, stayed with us, as well as new donations from Melanie Swisher, Arthur Gross Jr., Georgia Mount, and my hiking partner for a day last year, Barb Erschlegel. Thanks to all of you for your support. It's so much appreciated. Now, this is a somewhat tentative request. I've been toying with the idea of going again next year and podcasting once more, so I've been reaching out to 1 or 2 companies to sponsor me and, of course, advertise their wares on the show. My request to all of you is, if you know of any companies who you think may benefit from sponsoring another thru-hike attempt on my behalf, please either talk to them or talk to me and put me in touch with them. I mean, I don't know if it's all going to come together, but if I don't see what may be out there, I'd never know, would I? I'll keep you all in the loop should things develop along those lines. But now, let's hear from Jordan Bowman, Director of Communications at the ATC, and, like me, a member of the AT class of 2014. Here's Jordan. Well, I'd like to introduce you to the ATC's Director of Communications, Jordan Bowman. Hi, Jordan. How are you?
I'm doing great, Steve. How about you?
I'm pretty good. And I didn't know this. You actually hiked the AT the same year as my first hike. When did you start?
I did. In 2014, I started on March 8th. I was planning on the standard March 1st departure like a lot of people do. But the weather turned sour that weekend, so pushed it a week. I was fortunate enough. I lived in Georgia the majority of my life. So that was more just like, well, we'll just push a week and tell everyone to to wish me luck a week later than normal.
Well, that answers why we never met on the trail, because I started 2 weeks later and I never caught anybody on the trail. So.
Right.
When did you finish, by the way?
That was on July 21st. So, wow. Just wrapped up the 5th anniversary not too long ago. So,
amazing.
Been a little nostalgia in the air.
And another thing I didn't know, and you sent me some notes, which is quite interesting to me, this year, well, next year rather, October 2021, is the 100th anniversary of Benton Mackay's article, which started all this, really. What is the AT trying to get from this anniversary?
Absolutely. I mean, you're hitting on it. This is really how many places have this sort of milestone of 100 years celebrating this idea of bringing people together to enjoy the outdoors. Really, what we see this at the ATC is really a time for introspection and a time for using this as a guiding light for our next century of conservation. So, 100 years ago, Benton Mackay had this great idea of setting aside a place specifically in the East where people would still have this ready supply of nature that would provide healing, recreation, potential economic spur, just this very far-reaching plan that's, I don't know how many people have actually gone through and read it, but it's, grand planning is kind of an understatement. So it's really looking back to this article during this year. And, we are constantly having this on our mind, but it's really a good time to look back and see what are some of these grand ideas he had, what have we achieved, and what can we do to really match that vision moving forward.
Part of it was the economy of that region, which could have been, I'm sure, was tough back in 1921. So in 2021, it's probably just as tough. So what are we doing as an organization? What are you doing as an organization to perhaps help the local communities?
Absolutely. I mean, you're hitting on some similarities to some of the things that we're having today, right? We're talking about a period of time. This is just after World War I. This is also a period of time, strangely enough, right after their own global pandemic, the Spanish flu, just recently before that. So really, this is a year where we're drawing attention to the AT as this resource, again, for everyone to enjoy. And that a big part of that is making sure that we are involving people in the communities, drawing people's attention to the communities. We have that difficulty this year of COVID-19, of course. So a big part of our messaging this year is also that idea of preparation. So it's a difficult one. We're trying to thread a few needles here to be able to celebrate this as widely as possible, but also acknowledge that there are some difficulties with that as well.
And the subject of this, our conversation, because I was given all these different subjects to look at it in different ways. And this particular subject, because you're the Director of Communications, is the message matters, defining the AT's voice. How effective do you believe, and this is your job, so you can tell me what you think about this, please be honest. How effective do you think that voice has been this past year?
I think it's been very effective. We've been receiving emails, many supportive, many that are, not so happy, which that's sort of the name of the game. I don't think anyone is particularly happy with the things that are happening in the world right now. But most people are reaching out and discussing and talking about, how this is a concern and how they can help make sure not only they are safe, but also the people around them are safe. We've received massive amounts of people reaching out and just saying, hey, I want to do both what's right for me and the people around me, but for the trail itself as well. So I think it has been effective. There's always a long way to go. There's always more that can be done. Over 3 million people hike the trail each year. I would love to say that we had reached every single one of them before they went to the trail and continue to do so afterwards. But that's a continual hill we have to climb.
It's tough to believe that, with so many people using the trail, that everybody would think the same thing. And as I've said in the show before, that I admire the way in which Sandy made a decision, or the board made a decision, or backed Sandy, and they put out the message, and they stuck with that message, because making decisions is kind of what management is all about. And,
absolutely.
And I was, while I know some people are against it, I think the AT have probably come out in many ways stronger than they were previously. And I know that you coordinate with state, local, and federal partners in terms of communications. How good was that communication in those early days? Because you all seemed to speak with the same voice, didn't you?
Absolutely. I was, I'm used to coordination at ATC. Every one of our partners that we work with, from trail clubs to communities to our agency partners, all of them are united in this goal of protecting this one-of-a-kind resource. And I was completely blown away of how quickly people were on board, the links that they would go to make sure they had messaging right. And, the cooperative management system has many, many, many moving parts. So to see them working well and so well together and congealing the way they did. It was, it was a sign of the times where people are uniting to protect the things that they love. So very impressed with that.
And as the director of communications, have you seen ways in which that could improve, or are you pretty happy with that? You think the system's pretty robust to handle these situations when they come up?
Well, I would be lying if I said everything went perfectly, right? And there's always room for improvement. So there's definitely ways, and this was a learning experience. I mean, this is something that none of us have experienced for 100 years at this point, where we had to worry about a global pandemic and things having to be closed, or new rules or regulations being put in place to protect public safety. And, the last time we did it, there was barely a telephone at that time, much less the internet, where there's messages going everywhere a million times a second, right? So, there's definitely ways that we can improve. And this was a really good learning experience. But again, I was very impressed with how quickly the messages were able to be put together, the amount of coordination.
You pretty much spoke with one voice, which is the important thing, to be honest with you. You can't have people being confused about what the ATC think. They can disagree with it as much as they like, but you have to speak with one voice. And I think that was certainly true. And certainly Absolutely. For next year, we've got another year starting. Well, some people start so early these days that starting in a couple of days' time, probably. So what is your advice right now as the ATC for hikers for 2021?
Well, with 2021, the number one thing that we're talking about and encouraging people to do is to really make sure that they're planning and preparing for the new situations that are around us. It's always extremely important to prepare for an Appalachian Trail hike, whether that's for an afternoon or for a full through hike. But this year has its own special difficulties and things, particularly as the COVID-19 epidemic continues on. That breezes potential challenges and I don't know of any right now, but it could lead to potential closures later on in the trail if there's a particular outbreak in an area. Right. But the main thing that we want people to do is to be prepared, to make sure they're paying attention. One thing we've specifically put together for this is a hiker resource library on Appalachian Trail Conservancy, our website. Just to make sure people have everything in one place where they can register their hike, so they can choose a starting date, whether for a through hike or just a multi-day hike, so they can see how many people are planning to start around the same location and date that you are. Uh-huh. That's extremely important for social distancing, and just, helps you really lay out that plan ahead of time.
And I noticed you in your notes to me, you've mentioned about a hiker preparation webinar series. What's that?
Absolutely. We have a team of experts at the ATC. I can't state that enough of just how impressed I am with our info services team and the knowledge that they have here. So basically every week, we took the holiday week off, of course, but basically every week leading up to the main through hiking season in March, we are having a weekly webinar that's going over a variety of topics, including, just general preparation, choosing an effective shelter location, all sorts of topics that are really just helping with preparation, making sure that you're leaving as little trace as possible, making sure you're being as safe as possible. Sure. And we invite everyone. That's open to everyone. There are limited spaces, and I know some of them have filled. But if there are any that you're interested in, we are repeating some of our sessions moving forward. So people are welcome to sign up for those.
Do you record them and just send people the recording or not?
Yes, we actually record all of them and post them on our YouTube channel after each session. So people can view those. Those are embedded on our website, or you can just go straight to our YouTube channel, which is YouTube/AT Conservancy.
And the most important thing, particularly for the old people like myself who hike the trail, are the privies going to be open this year?
To my knowledge, there are still some that will be closed. I believe the National Park Service has closed some in their area. That may have been updated. I have not checked as of this morning. What we are doing, we are actually encouraging people to avoid some of these places where a lot of people are congregating. I mean, that's specifically shelters and privies. We certainly know more about the way that COVID-19 is spread than we did this time last year it wasn't here yet, but roughly a year ago when it was first happening. But there's still that risk of cross-contamination and potentially picking up some of these things wherever people have been congregating. So, yes, to my knowledge, most will be open, but we're encouraging people to practice extreme caution with any spots like shelters or privies. In fact, we encourage people to use leave no trace practices when they're burying and using when they're burying their feces or using the bathroom or anything like that.
I'm sure there's going to be a whole lot of almost mini campsites that are going to build up along the trail, which could cause its own problems, obviously. Leave no trace obviously being particularly important. Are you concerned about that? Because, there are several times my partner and I hiking last year would just step off the trail and find ourselves a little clearing and put 2 tents down. But you get 4 or 5 people together and they decide they want to set up a new campsite effectively. That may cause problems to plants and stuff like that. Are you trying to manage that in the AT kickoff? Are you going to be at the AT kickoff telling people to try to avoid that sort of thing?
We're absolutely encouraging people. And this is one of the reasons we have that webinar specifically about selecting a campsite. If you're not staying at an established campsite, we want you to be able to choose a place that is resilient, that's, you aren't accidentally setting up on top of, say, an endangered plant or something like that. That's or really the main Absolutely. That was too. Yeah, that would be bad for a very different reason. But absolutely. And just making sure that, people understand that they have an impact. And, last year we had record visitation. The Appalachian Trail is very difficult to tell exactly how many people are accessing the trail just because there's so many access points. But when places like McAfee Knob and Annapolis Rocks, places like this where there's always been historically high numbers and those are exceeded, we can extrapolate and tell that there is almost certainly trail-wide increases in hikers and things like that.
Lastly, Jordan, what I'd like to ask you is, as a 2014 thru hiker, so I know the trail means a heck of a lot to you.
Absolutely.
And I know that in a lot of these conversations we've had, I don't know whether you've listened to them, the other ones I've done with your ATC colleagues, something I knew, and I guess I knew, but I didn't really think about, that your job is to look after the trail. It's not to look after hikers. It's to make sure the trail is okay. What does the trail mean to you, Jordan, as a person? What does it mean to you?
It means a lot of things. So I hate to cop out to that, but it is one of those things where it has become ingrained as kind of part of who I am. There's not a day where I don't think back to my thru hike and just think about, how lucky and how fortunate I was to actually have that experience in the first place. But as far as, what it means, it really is that one of those few remaining connections where we can really get out and experience this uninterrupted connection with nature. And that's really one of the big parts of our role, is making sure that we preserve as many of these uninterrupted areas where people can get a true natural hiking experience as much as possible. And I will say, to your point, our role is protecting the trail. But that also includes making sure that we are informing hikers and making sure that they're able to experience it in a safe and enjoyable way as much as possible as well. So that is an aspect, but absolutely our key role is making sure this resource, it's made it 100 years at this point. We're going for 100 more, and then beyond that for sure.
Yeah. So did you start working for ATC after your hike, or were you already working with them?
I did. I was actually a high school teacher for about 5 years prior to that. I had training in media and public relations and things beyond that when I was in school. Did a little bit of that afterwards, but went into teaching for about 5 years. Decided it was time for a break, and that's when I went on my 2014 thru hike. I was already in love with the trail. My father was thankfully an avid outdoorsman, still is, and introduced me to hiking and the Appalachian Trail. And even in high school, I was like, this is something I need to do. Just to know what it is, what this means. And, it's been a lifelong love since then.
I do love the fact, by the way, that so many of ATC's employees, or quite a lot of them, have done the trail. So they and either all of it or quite a lot of it. So I think that's a really great aspect of that. You bring something to the trail that normal employees wouldn't in this sort of circumstance. The fact that you've done it really, really helps, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if we didn't have that perspective, we would be missing a key element of what people enjoy about the trail. But but there are some people who are section hiking the AT that work at the ATC. There's some people who do day hikes, and that's the extent that they want to do. And that, what, quite frankly, we need all of those perspectives. If everybody was a thru hiker, this would be focused on only one aspect of what the trail means. Whereas where we have multi-day hikers, people that day hike, or some people who just like knowing that the trail is there and may have no interest in setting foot on it. There are lots. I can list multiple members who have put in their donation for the year and will say, I probably will never set foot on this, but please make sure it is protected for the people ahead of me. And it's just one of these things. Even if you never set foot on the trail, it still inspires the imagination, and people love knowing that it's there.
Yeah, well said. I totally agree with that. And I really appreciate it. I hope you have an easier 2021 than you had in 2020, because the message does matter. And, making sure the ATC has a voice, the AT has a voice through the ATC, I think is important. So I thank you for coming on and sharing your experience with us. Thanks so much.
No, absolutely. I hope you and everyone else listening just has a safe holiday, and hope we all have happy trails in 2021.
Well said. All the best.
Take care.
Bye. Do you know, I thought that was right on point. It can't have been easy for the ATC this year. And as I said, I admire people and organisations who make decisions and implement them, whether or not I agree or disagree with them. It was good to hear from Jordan. And do you know what? Whether you agree with what happened this year, every representative of the organisation who's taken the opportunity to come on the show has been articulate, informative, and clearly in love with the Appalachian Trail. Let's face it could be a whole lot worse. And just before we move on to this week's reading, I thought I'd better share with you who won Larry Knight's fabulous map. The winner was a guy called Christopher Marshburn, and Christopher entered the competition just an hour or so, or maybe 2 hours before the drawing. Well done, Christopher, and I'd appreciate it if you send me your home address and I'll mail the map to you as soon as I possibly can. Congratulations, and thanks to everybody who joined in the fun and watched me doing the draw live on Facebook Live. So now let's finish off with Walking the Appalachian Trail by Larry Luxembourg. And this week, there are people in a hurry. I'll see you next week. Inchworm, ways to hike the AT. I think I laughed and cried more in those 6.5 months than I have in the rest of my life. Connor, Carolina Cooker's Coward, 1990 Trail Report to ATC. Most years, for more than a decade, starting in 1973, Mary Jo, the tortoise, Callan, would take the bus east from San Diego and hike north from Springer Mountain. The farthest she ever got was Waynesboro, Virginia. A cheerful grandmother who backpacked into her 70s, Mary Jo felt comfortable with the section of trail she knew and didn't harbour any desire to complete the whole thing. One year, Charlie Trivett of Damascus, Virginia, had heard Mary Jo was coming. On a rainy day when she hadn't made it in, he went to Abingdon Gap Shelter with Warren Doyle to check on her. He found her at the shelter and he introduced himself and said, "I've come to get you." She said, "Come to get me?" He said, "Yes, I'll take you in, let you shower and spend the night, then I'll bring you back tomorrow and let you hike on in." She said, "Young man, you can take me in, but you won't bring me back. I've been trying for 3 days to get off this mountain, and I couldn't." She ended that year's hike there. On her last trip, Mary Jo found the trail increasingly difficult. She'd leave notes at the bottom of a hill, tell her age and leave a pack, asking someone to carry it up for her, Charlie said. The last year she came through Damascus, Charlie missed her, and he's always regretted it. She died in 1989 at age 81. There are two ATs, one speaker told the 1993 ATC meeting. One, an Appalachian trail, runs from Georgia to Maine. Another, the Appalachian Trail, runs from Maine to Georgia. In truth, there are dozens of Appalachian trails, each what a hiker wants to make of it. The physical trail, the 265 mountain climbs, 255 shelters and thousands of 2 by 6 inch white blazes that mark the narrow footway, is in many ways the least important of the trails. The trail is also an abstract concept, a path to a hiker's dreams and aspirations. After all, what separates the AT from other trails is not something tangible, but rather its mystique, its history, its trail community. More than 70 years after Benton Mackay proposed the trail, his idea resonates as powerfully as ever. It's difficult to find agreement even on relatively simple notions about the physical trail. For instance, just how much trail is there? In 1993, the ATC listed the length as 2,146.7 miles. But only 3 years ago, Warren Doyle and two members of his expedition, Steve Rarity and Ken Miller, rolled a measuring wheel, dubbed Mr. Yuck, from Springer to Katahdin. This was the first time a wheel ever covered the trail in a continuous journey, and the verdict was 2,164.9 miles. ATC attributed part of the difference to the difficulty of correctly calibrating the wheel. Also, as my two young sons frequently point out, a thru-hiker has to walk hundreds of extra miles to shelters, water sources and resupply points. Debates rage over which trail to hike. To a non-hiker, the debate may seem to be about subtle points, but it proceeds with great passion and occasionally venom whenever hikers gather. The question is this: should one stick to the White Blazes, the official trail route, no matter what? Veteran hikers know that in many places side trails, blue blazes, are available. Sometimes the blue blaze trails are shortcuts or easier routes. Other times they are harder, more scenic, or avoid a hitchhike into town. A third option, called yellow blazing since the mid-80s, is to skip trail sections entirely, perhaps by hitchhiking or taking a bus. A fourth alternative is to hike some days without a full backpack, known as slackpacking. Slackpacking is one of the least controversial ways to hike the AT. Often when a hiker is staying at a town or a hostel, someone will keep his pack and shuttle him to a trailhead so he can hike for a day without a pack. Some hikers are reluctant, having become quite attached to their packs. A pack is a hiker's closest companion for 4 to 6 months. Some even carry their packs up Katahdin instead of leaving them at the ranger station. Also, packs occasionally get stolen, and hikers like to keep a close eye on them to prevent a spoiled journey. Purists insist on following the White Blazes. They argue that you have not hiked the whole trail unless you stick to the designated route. Mark Second Wind DiMichele, a 5-time thru hiker, believes the danger is that once you deviate from the White Blazes, it's difficult to stop. Before you know it, you skip big sections of the trail and lose your desire to finish. You end up with a much less satisfying trail experience. He also feels every section of trail offers something. By hiking the trail continuously, your journey is more than the sum of the parts. The contrast between the sections helps you appreciate the truly outstanding areas. Peter, the Cheshire Cat Van Huy, notes that some purists are so pure that they will take big risks to stick to the White Blazes. If they were going over balds in bad weather and there was a bad weather route going around it, they'd stick to the White Blazes. But people who take the convenience and choose shorter routes tend to lose their drive. The purist question has been around almost as long as thru hikers. Earl Schaefer had no doubt that he wanted to follow the White Blazes. But sometimes, particularly in southwestern Virginia, there were no White Blazes and the footway was indistinct for miles. Gene Espy, the second thru hiker, made a point of retracing his steps after side trips so he'd return to his original spot on the trail. Dick Jones has hiked sections of the trail for 15 years and has no intention of finishing. He says some parts of the trail are inferior and he has no desire to hike them. The trail, just because of the very nature of it, has an awful lot of what I call fillers, sections of the trail that act only as links. Yet he returns to other places again and again to see them in winter or in peak foliage season. To me, that's much more rewarding than bragging that I went from Oglethorpe to Katahdin. Another view comes from Bob Odie Coyote Peterson, who hiked the AT in 1980 after having done the PCT. A strong, opinionated hiker, he reported to ATC that his objective was not to hike the entire AT, but to hike a continuous route from Springer to Katahdin, and that is what he did. He said, "I was not a rigorous AT follower, for sometimes it went where I did not want to go, and sometimes I wanted to go where it did not." He did such things as walk along the Blue Ridge Parkway and have a meal at Peaks of Otter because he'd heard the restaurant was good. His aim was to be the first northbound thru-hiker to start at Springer and the last to finish at Katahdin, and to enjoy himself along the way. And he did all those things. Arthur, AB positive, Bachelder, met two women who'd hike a few days, go into town and hitchhike ahead. This is how they were doing their vacation. They'd say, "We'll do it our way. We do get tied in too much to this," Arthur added. "Oh, you're a purist. You're a thru-hiker. Are you having fun? If you're not having fun, what are you doing out here?" You should be able to say, "I took this trail and I saw 14 moose." Sometimes those side trails have more views, more flowers, something you wouldn't find on the regular trail. Let's face it, how much wildlife did you see on the regular AT? Keep in mind that the AT is not cast in stone, though sometimes on stone. Rarely, if ever, is the trail the same for 2 straight years. Sections of the trail are constantly relocated to improve routes and to avoid eroded spots, encroaching developments or heavily logged areas. For many years, following the White Blazes would not have gotten a hiker from Georgia to Maine. It was not until the mid-1930s that Egbert Walker, an internationally known Smithsonian botanist, and the PATC developed standards for white paint blazing. Dr. Harry F. Rentschler, a founder of the Blue Mountain Club, resisted ATC's efforts to standardise white blazes, saying the paint detracted from the trail's natural quality. Mary Dorsey, a friend of Myron Avery, found a way to change his mind, according to an account by Morris J. Forrester Jr. in the AT News. Mary convinced Dr. Rentschler that she was worried about getting lost when she did trail work alone. She claimed she had trouble spotting the old axe marks. He permitted her to put paint blazes where she felt it necessary. She decided it was necessary to paint blazes frequently and spent a summer putting the first paint blazes on a 100-mile stretch. Another issue is whether to thru-hike or section hike the trail. People with limited vacation time must do the trail in short sections or wait for retirement. Hiking the trail over many years has its advantages. It gives one something to savour in the off-season. Many section hikers study the guidebooks thoroughly, learning more about the trail and surrounding areas than most thru-hikers. Ken Scott, who did the trail in 25 separate trips from 1972 to 1985, deciphered dozens of bus and train lines all along the East Coast because that's how he got to the trail nearly every time. For thru-hikers, the trail can be a tunnel, a long, wonderful tunnel, but a tunnel nevertheless. Something 100 yards off trail might as well be in China. Those who piece the trail together are among the most dogmatic in sticking to white blazes. Each time O.W. Red Owl Lacey completed a section, he would cross the road and touch the first blaze on the other side, assuring that he wouldn't miss any of the trail. For section hikers, it's perhaps more difficult to assure themselves that they have hiked the entire trail. Ned Greast, a former ATC vice chair, claimed a section hiker's record. 46 years elapsed between the time he first set foot on the trail, hiking from Franconia Notch to Mount Lafayette, New Hampshire, and when he completed it at Spivey Gap, Tennessee, in 1975 at age 66. Ray Hunt earned a special distinction among section hikers. He was the first ATC chair to complete the trail while serving in that capacity. Myron Avery completed the trail in 1936 while chair, but the trail was not officially completed until the following year. As a lawyer, Avery surely would have understood such a fine distinction. Never a long-distance backpacker, Ray has been, though, an avid hiker for a long time. He spent from 1967 to 1989 piecing together sections of the trail, always less than 10 days at a time. It took me 50 trips over 22 years to finish the trail, Ray said. When I started, I had no intention of doing it all. I was just hiking with friends. At about 500 miles, they told me I was going to do it all. I said, that's ridiculous. At 1,000 miles, I realised they were right. I started to do it more intently. I was doing 50 miles a year. At that rate, I figured I wouldn't finish until age 85. I felt compelled to finish. Jim Pony Adams has been hiking the trail in sections since 1987. After retiring from the Air Force, he found he missed the discipline of doing something every day. Now he's addicted to the trail. Hiking in bits and pieces, he's not in as big a hurry as thru-hikers. They have to be on the move all the time, he said. He also likes that he can get charged up again each year and choose when to return to the trail. I wouldn't do it any other way, he said. O.W. Red Owl Lacey did the trail in dribs and drabs from 1970 to 1980. As a sign of his determination, he vowed not to cut his hair until he finished the trail. By the end, he had a waist-long ponytail tied with a rubber band, an unusual style for a college dean. Surprisingly, no one ever asked why he was letting his hair grow. OW's motives for doing the trail, like those of most 2,000-milers, were never clear. They were vague and broad-based and poorly articulated, he said. He first heard of the trail in 1936 when President Franklin D. Roosevelt dedicated Shenandoah National Park. His family listened to the ceremony on their first radio. As the speakers explained that the park protected 90 miles of the AT, OW's older brother said, "Let's do that sometime." OW thought the idea intriguing. His brother died in World War II, though, and the idea of hiking the trail got pushed to the far back burner. Then, in the mid-60s, as Dean of Students at Franklin and Marshall College in Pennsylvania, I was getting pretty wiped out. That turbulent era was one of the stupidest times to be a Dean of Students. OW was looking for an outlet, and one day a colleague said, "Come along with us, we're going to hike some of the AT." OW became interested. The old dreams came back, and I got hooked. The thing that really guided me was a talk with an early AT hiker who also worked at Franklin and Marshall. Montgomery Lampy had walked from Maine to Georgia. He also maintained some 20 miles of the AT in Pennsylvania and was active in several hiking clubs. OW asked him how to backpack the AT. "Don't," Montgomery said. "What do you mean, don't?" "Don't carry your kitchen and bedroom on your back when you can sleep between clean sheets every night and have somebody cook your meals for you." He continued with more counsel. "The Appalachians are made up of a series of ridges. Every 7 or 10 miles there are usually gaps and transmontane roads. Often there are little camps or small hotels where you can stay near the trail. Walk from gap to gap rather than shelter to shelter. Don't walk uphill if you can walk downhill. Walk from high gap to low gap." "Anything else I should know?" OW asked. "You'll never do it if you don't take the next step." OW took Montgomery's advice. "Instead of following the long green tunnel, I saw the trail in every one of the 52 weeks of the year," he said. "I remember floundering in snow up to my armpits. I didn't make many miles that day, but it was glorious." Thru-hikers tend to think of themselves as the elite, he said, but there's a certain elitism to taking 10 years. The beauty of the trail is that it's there for each person to discover in his own way. Other decisions await prospective AT hikers. Should one hike north to south, south to north, as most do, or a little of both, flip-flop? Hike alone, with a single partner, or in a group? Hike quickly or slowly? Bring a dog along? Take side trips, complete the thru-hike, then turn around and go back? Yo-yo. Most thru-hikers start in Georgia mid-March to mid-April and hike north. That way you follow spring north and have a longer time to complete the trail before harsh weather sets in. The advantage for sociable hikers is that they have plenty of company. On the other hand, there may be too much company. As for weather, most people prefer cold or warm weather hiking, but not both. Adjusting your starting date by even a few weeks to suit this preference can greatly enhance your enjoyment of the AT. Hiking southbound, most people wait until late May or June when the worst of Maine's blackfly season is over. Except for a few weeks when northbounders are passing by, the southbounders don't have much company. In the south, they hit hunting season and maybe some early winter storms. Rod Kinley hiked southbound from June the 27th to December the 1st, 1973. "We were still hiking in shorts in December. We were so toughened by then," he said. In North Carolina, it was 18 degrees on his 18th birthday, and he walked in shorts. Kinley and his 3 hiking partners had most of the trail to themselves. "After New England, we never shared a shelter with anyone," he said. Because of the lonely stretches, southbounders often crave company. Rod remembers meeting a group at a cave near Irwin, Tennessee. They had filled the cave with dry leaves 2 or 3 feet deep. We saw their packs on shelves inside and we asked if we could join them. They used a forked stick to cook meat for stew over a fire, making it warm in the cave. They were from a church college nearby and they did this often. Some people compromise by flip-flopping, hiking the trail in several sections and different directions in one year. They can start later in the south, hike perhaps half the trail to Harper's Ferry, then take a bus or hitchhike to Katahdin and start south. On their southbound leg, flip-floppers may meet hikers they met in the south. Flip-flopping makes it easier to handle the weather, especially for older hikers who average fewer miles per day. It diminishes the crowds but interrupts the continuity of the trek. Some flip-floppers regret not having a climb of Katahdin to mark the end of the trail. Paul Bigfoot Torini hiked south from Katahdin to Lonesome Lake, New Hampshire in several trips in 1974 and 1975. In 1976, he hiked north from Springer, finishing at Lonesome Lake. When I got to Lonesome Lake, I had finished it, but I wasn't elated about it because I wasn't on top of Katahdin. It left me with an ambivalent feeling. It went back to Springer in 1978 to do the trail again. At the end, I experienced this euphoria. It really meant something to me to complete it end to end, uninterrupted. My first completion was anticlimactic. I don't recommend anyone do it that way. The first yo-yo occurred in 1982-83 when Steve Yo-Yo Knuckles hiked from Georgia to Maine, climbed Katahdin, turned around and returned to Georgia, then turned around again, 3 thru hikes in all. In 1984, Phil Goad did 3 thru hikes in one calendar year. Ward Leonard in some years hikes the trail almost continuously, and at last report he'd completed the trail 10 times, including once in 60 days and twice in 150 days. The first woman to do a yo-yo hike was Bonita Heaton in 1990-91. Speed hiking has been around for a long time, even though ATC discourages it and many thru hikers frown on the practice. In an echo of a question often heard about every thru hike, people ask, if someone hikes so many miles a day at such a fast pace, how can they enjoy the woods and mountains? Record holder David, the runner Horton, points out that his average pace was under 4 miles an hour. He claims he appreciated the views and remembers what he saw as well as most thru hikers. What he missed were the social parts of the trail. The average thru hiker has 6 months to meet people and less pressure to get miles in. Horton did the whole trail in 52 days. Benton Mackay did not favour thru hikes, and he especially frowned on speed hikes. Some people like to record how speedily they can traverse the length of the trail, but I would give a prize for the ones who took the longest time, he said. Few organised groups have hiked the whole trail. Except for Warren Doyle's 4 expeditions and one by Kirk Sinclair, most thru groups have been loose collections of hikers who met along the way and stuck more or less together for large sections of the trail. Albie Pokrob, who hiked the trail alone in 1978 with Warren's 1980 expedition and with the informal Last Wave in 1984, found that he preferred the freedom of going at his own pace. It's nice to have the feeling that you have everything you need on your back and you can stop wherever you want to. With the group stopping at road crossings, it took away a lot of the spontaneity, but Albie realised that many people wouldn't go except with a formal group. Leave your dog at home. Listen to thru hiker Henry Phillips, who has such a love for dogs that he keeps 15 at home. He says that he detests dogs running around a shelter on a rainy day, shaking themselves dry over his sleeping bag. Dogs can foul water sources, get in fights and frighten hikers, and extended hikes can injure some dogs. They are not permitted in Great Smoky Mountains and Baxter Parks. For all that, certainly many people would not go anywhere without their dogs. Jerry Harper, who was on the trail in 1993, said his dog George could find water many times when he could not. He takes off and I know there's water. A thirsty dog will find water. The only times Jerry got lost were when he didn't trust George's sense of direction. Many dogs are well-mannered and a joy for other hikers to be around. Side trips and hobbies can also make the thru hike more enjoyable. Sonny Light Eagle Shames decided partway through her trip that this was likely to be a one-time adventure and she was going to make the most of it. She hitchhiked off the trail to Hershey Park, county fairs and music festivals. She found they added an extra dimension to her thru hike. Such natural features as Old Rag White Oak Canyon in Shenandoah, Anthony's Nose in New York and Gulf Hargus in Maine made for interesting side trips. Others like to pursue their hobbies. Collins Chu, a 2,000-miler and ATC vice chair who wrote a book on AT geology, studied the rocks along the trail. Joe Cool Breeze Fennelly liked to drop in on bluegrass festivals. Jimmy B. Bodmer raced through 1,400 miles of the AT so he could walk to an orienteering meet in Connecticut. Sid, Not That Vicious, Nisbet, liked to measure the temperature of springs. The coldest, Edmonds Col in New Hampshire at 35 degrees Fahrenheit in August 1990. Mark Second Wind DiMichele amassed an impressive collection of Indian arrowheads and artifacts. Ken Miller, on his 1989 thru hike, periodically hitchhiked off the trail as far as Florida to do contra dancing. Profile: David the Runner Horton and Scott Maniac Grierson. In 1991, David Horton and Scott Grierson decided independently of each other to break the AT speed record. Each set his target at 56 days, an astounding average of almost 40 miles a day. They both started in Georgia 2 days apart in mid-May. What are the odds that in the same year 2 people would independently decide on 56 days and start within 2 days of each other, David said. A few months before their start, they learned of each other's plans and talked on the telephone. At first, each was sceptical of the other's abilities. I dismissed him at first, said David, who was 41 then. I thought a hiker can't beat me, and he thought the same of me. But the more we found out about each other, the more we developed a sense of respect. Scott, 24, had thru-hiked in 1988. Along the way, he learned about speed hiking from Greg, the traveller, Key. I was astounded he could run uphill with a full pack, Scott said. Greg taught him which packs and hiking shoes were best, how to lengthen his stride and how to use his arms to help propel himself forward, as one does in cross-country skiing. He also shifted to an internal frame pack, which permitted greater freedom of movement. Later that trip, he hiked the length of the AT in Connecticut in a single day. It was his first big mileage day, and it took him a few days to recover. But I realised I could walk 50 miles in a day, Scott said. David Horton is a world-class ultramarathoner. A regular marathon is 26 miles. Ultras are commonly 50 or 100 miles and may take up to 4 days to complete. David often races on mountain trails, enduring dramatic elevation changes. Some races offer more elevation change than one would get by running from sea level to the top of Mount Everest in a day. Although he hadn't hiked much, David, who lives near the AT in Lynchburg, Virginia, had run races that included parts of the AT. I couldn't imagine going the whole way from Georgia to Maine, he said. Then in 1987, he read an article on the 50th anniversary of the AT's completion and thought, man, I'd really like to do it someday. He had in mind a traditional thru-hike, but figured he couldn't take enough time away from his family and job as chairman of the physical education department at Liberty College. Finally, in July 1990, he decided to do the trail, and to do it fast. He learned from Warren Doyle that Ward Leonard, with a full pack and no support crew, had hiked the trail in 60 2/3 days. The prior record was 65 days, 21 hours and 15 minutes by John Avery in 1978. Warren had done the trail in 66 1/3 days in 1973. David calculated that he needed to do 36 miles a day to finish in 56 days, but he also figured he'd have to take some days off. Initially, he planned on carrying a 15 to 20 pound pack, but that was before help arrived. David advertised in Ultramarathon magazine for runners who lived along the trail and would be willing to support his trip. 30 responded. They met him at road crossings with food and Conquest, the sports drink he drank every day. At night, they took him home or to a motel. Thanks to the support crew, he needed only a light day pack while hiking. Since David is always in training for ultramarathons, he didn't do much physical preparation for the trip. He runs 70 miles a week routinely and 90 to 100 when he's training hard, about 3,600 miles a year. Nearly every Saturday, he'll run 25 to 30 miles in the mountains. Before he did the AT, he took a 2-day backpacking trip of about 80 miles and another of 3 days and 120 miles, both with a 15 to 20 pound pack. It was a struggle. It liked to have killed me, he said. He realised he would have a tough time setting the record with a full pack. One thru-hiker David talked to told him he thought David could make the record-breaking trip. It gave me a lot of confidence, but I still didn't think I could do it, said David. I expected it to be an exercise in futility. Scott started from Springer on May the 7th and David started 2 days later. Their crews kept them apprised of each other's progress. David credited Scott's competition with helping him go faster. He finally caught Scott in southern New England and they leapfrogged for a few days before David went ahead for good. I don't like to say this, but I really struggled the first 1,000 miles, David said. Days 6 to 9 were especially hard. Coming out of the Smokies, running long downhills caused shin splints. On one memorable day near Hot Springs, his right leg was badly swollen and he had to carry his heavy pack. He was urinating blood, his fingers were swollen, and it was pouring rain. In an article for Runner's World, he wrote, "With every step, I had to tell myself not to wince. I tried to block out the pain and, in spite of it, stay on schedule." 3 things helped him get through this period: packing the leg in ice at the end of each day, anti-inflammatory drugs, and prayer. In Shenandoah, David developed a problem with his quadriceps, but soon thereafter his physical problems began to diminish and he speeded up. Near Harper's Ferry, he had what he figured was his fastest mile of the trip. Checking the markers along the C&O Canal towpath, he ran a mile in 8 minutes and 57 seconds at the end of a day. During this stage, he was pleased with his good health. "The level of fitness I reached on the trail surprised me," David said. Warren Doyle said that in 2 to 3 weeks you develop a much higher level of conditioning. It sounded logical, but the average person's not in really good shape when he starts the trail. I found there's a higher level of conditioning even for someone in very good shape. The body is remarkable in how well it adapts to stress. In the evening, as the hours passed, I could feel my body recovering. Until the last 10 days, I woke up refreshed and ready to go. After Harper's Ferry, David continued to feel better. He was right on schedule, averaging 38.6 miles per day. From there to Mount Moosilauke in New Hampshire, he picked up the pace, averaging 44.4 miles a day. I felt fantastic, he said. He ended up spending 27 days on the first half of the trail and 25 on the second. In Pennsylvania, he had 2 straight days of 52 and 53 miles. The weather was cool and the terrain moderate. Coming into Boiling Springs, Pennsylvania, he read a register entry by someone hiking with Maniac, saying that he'd done a 50-mile day. I thought if he went 50 miles here, I could too, David said. It turned out that he didn't. From Moosilauke north, it was again a struggle for David. Until that point, he'd spent 11 hours a day on the trail. From Moosilauke to Katahdin, he spent 13.5 hours a day. One of his problems was that it was hard to meet his support crew in the White Mountains, where a day's hike of 38 miles usually left you in the middle of nowhere. Before the White Mountains, David ran the flats and downhills and walked the uphills. He usually tried to stop before a climb so he could start slowly in the morning by walking the uphill. I'd do an easy 15 to 20 minutes to wake up. His 6:54 a.m. start at Springer was his latest of the entire trip. During the last few weeks, when he had to put in longer days because of the more difficult trail, his average start was 4:54. I liked the mornings and hated the afternoons, David said. I was the reverse of Maniac. He didn't get as much sleep as I did. He'd hike till midnight, 1, 2 in the morning every day. It took him time to wake up. In the Whites, David had trouble keeping to his regimen. The pace was unbelievably slow there, he said. I didn't get enough sleep. I didn't eat enough. I got tired of eating to eat. I went physically downhill and hit roots and rocks more. I was emotionally breaking down. I was beating myself to death. Those last 2 states, I was near total destruction. In the last week, he'd fall a half dozen times a day, too tired to pick his feet up. A fall near Katahdin left a 6-inch cut in his arm. Eating enough is the key, he said. I'd been eating 5,000 to 6,000 calories a day. In New Hampshire and Maine, I didn't eat that much. From Massachusetts on, they don't have buffets in restaurants. Still, he kept going and never really considered taking a day off. I can't say that it would have helped, he said. One of my crew members in New England said, "You're ahead of the pace you need to set a record. Why don't you take a day off?" It was like asking a miler on world record pace to slow down. I felt like it was a personal insult. One day off wouldn't have helped. I needed weeks off, months off. A born-again Christian, David depended heavily on the power of God, the power of prayer. I realised how fortunate I was. Not many people really get to chase their dreams. Not many people get to do something no one else has done. Not many get to do an unbelievably challenging experience. There were days when I felt tired and didn't think I could do it. Somehow, some way, he'd give me the energy. At Katahdin, he felt only pain and relief. He hadn't enjoyed the last 10 days. It didn't feel real until the day before, he said. I felt I was on a perpetual AT treadmill. It seemed like it was going to go on forever. The first week back, he had the worst night's sleep of his life. I'd have nightmares. I'd be dreaming I was going uphill and I'd never get to the top of the mountain. I'd wake up and think, where am I? What am I doing in the house? 4 days later, on July the 4th, I ran 2 miles. It hurt so much. In September, I ran a 50-mile race and placed 3rd, and I felt I wasn't recovered. In October, I ran a 100-mile race and won, and I felt recovered. Mentally, it took a few weeks, physically 3 months, to recover. I'd lie on the couch and watch TV because I didn't have the energy to get up. I hated going to the basement because I didn't want to climb back up the stairs. His mental recovery was shorter than that of most thru-hikers, perhaps because his trip was more compressed. Still, he went through many of the same experiences. It seemed really strange, the traffic, cars, noise. I didn't feel like I belonged. It was hard to feel motivated to catch up at work. Like many other hikers, David said the AT taught him patience, adaptability, and how to make the best of circumstances. The AT is a part of me, he said. I really feel at home on the AT. I love talking to thru-hikers. There's a special bond, like among people who go to the war. We shared so much together. Maniac and I became great friends. We went through rain, pain, heat, up hills and down hills. There's a real camaraderie. Both David and Maniac endured a certain amount of ridicule from other hikers, but David points out that an average hiker walks 2 miles per hour, and he averaged 3.54 miles per hour. How much more can you see at 2 miles per hour than at 3.54? He asked. Very, Very little. I can talk about all the beautiful and spectacular places along the trail and all the horrible places. The horrible places I got through quicker. And in the good places, they'd see one spectacular overlook a day, and I'd see 3 or 4. He hiked only short stretches in the dark, usually the first 15 minutes in the morning. He never hiked in the dark at night. I wanted to see the trail too, he said. The only thing I missed was the social experience. Scott, too, had to deal with flack about the speed hike, but he counters, anyone who has tried to do the trail in 1 year is under time constraints, Scott said. You're not out there counting the rings on the fungus and covering 15 miles in a day. Of course, Scott covered a good deal more than 15 miles a day. He averaged 2.3 miles an hour for 16 hours a day. He'd start out slowly, then hike long into the night. Most people go out too fast in the morning, he said. Go slow until your body warms up. Scott came to the AT in 1988 as a novice hiker and was hardly left since. He didn't get off to an auspicious start, however. He was at Springer 1 month after he decided to hike the first time. He'd bought a huge pack and stuffed it with 75 pounds of gear, including 40 pounds of food, enough to last until Hot Springs, North Carolina. He was planning to resupply it only 4 times on the whole trail. I've made quite a transition, Scott said. Quickly he learned to shed weight and the other tricks of the trade. He didn't have any synthetic clothing, now a staple of hikers, until he was 3/4 finished with the trail. He took 6.5 months and it was a wonderful experience. I came from a simple background. People go to the woods to get away from the pressures of everyday life. I had it different. I had a magical childhood and a magical little world in Maine. For me, it was meeting America head on. For Scott, the speed hike was the ultimate test. This is what I'm made of. Can I handle it? My mental state was, I will do this, no matter what. Quitting was not an option. I didn't consider it. The trail was the perfect place to do that test. I felt at home on the AT. David knows that eventually his record will be broken, but I'd like it not to be for a long time, he said. I thought 60.5 days was soft, but 52 days and 9 hours is not soft. I had no major injuries, no horrible weather. In fact, I had spectacular days on Katahdin and in the Presidentials. I had rain 9 of the first 12 days, but it wasn't bad. It kept me relatively cool. The real threat is, will Maniac decide to break the record? Sometimes he talks about doing it in under 50 days. I think that would be real tough. I would like for people to have tried it and failed. I'd help them, though. I'd give them advice, and when they got to my area, I'd go out and help them. But I don't think it's going to be broken for a while.